huge fan of mathematics. I enjoy math in school, and I've been performing a mental math stage show around the country for the last 3 years. Later, I'll be showing you one of the things I do in my show. The theme of this conference is Design the Future. This theme is great because anyone in any discipline can design the future of that discipline. Scientists design the future of science, technologists design the future of technology. Despite the fact that it isn't as popularized in the news, mathematicians are designing the future of mathematics. There are dozens of peer-reviewed journals out there publishing new insights about different areas of mathematics. I think it is also worth pointing out that Americans have a strong connection to this theme, whether they recognize it or not. We as a nation take pride in the fact that we were the first to land a man on the moon. We are proud to be on the cutting edge of technology, considering that Apple and Google are both companies based in the US. But all of these discoveries and inventions have a huge foundation of mathematics beneath them. Constructing, launching, and controlling a space shuttle requires vast knowledge in calculus and trigonometry. Computer science is all applications of graph theory and linear algebra. After skimming through a recent edition of an American-based mathematics journal, I saw writers discussing their new discoveries that needed combinatorics, statistics, geometry, number theory, group theory, and much more. These are all different areas of mathematics that can be used to design the future. In 2012, I saw a study come out that ranked America as 32nd in the world in mathematics. This got me worried. How is our country supposed to continue innovating the world and designing the future if we aren't proficient in mathematics? In school this last year, we received a 4-month-long group research project where we had to identify a problem in America and figure out how to fix it. I was immediately reminded of America's low mathematics ranking, so our group decided to figure out how to get us back to the top. From all of our research, we found a lot of things that can be improved. If you want to improve math education, it's natural to start by identifying the people who are teaching it. Let me ask you a question. Raise your hand if you've had a teacher or professor who really inspired you to enjoy a certain topic. Maybe you didn't enjoy it before, but you did during or after their class. Okay, a bunch of you. Let me ask another question. Raise your hand if you've had a teacher or professor who turned you off of a subject. Maybe it wasn't necessarily their fault, but you suddenly found yourself struggling in the class or losing your motivation. Okay, a bunch of you again. I think that shows that a teacher plays a huge role in a student's enthusiasm for a subject. And from our research, we found that many American teachers seem to lack interest in math. A major in elementary education has a huge focus on psychology, pedagogy, which is a fancy word for teaching methods, quite a bit of English, but a much smaller requirement in mathematics. Someone who doesn't like English would never consider this major, but someone who doesn't like math could get through it without much trouble. So many elementary teachers will end up being people who dislike math. Let me tell you a story. In school this last year, I was taking geometry, and a big part of geometry is proofs. Up until high school geometry, math is taught like a belief system, but it doesn't have to be that way, and I don't think it should be. Math is the most verifiable thing known to man. That's why organizations don't bother to disagree with it. That's why aliens in science fiction movies choose to communicate with it. If math were based on faith rather than certainty, we would have situations like this. Proof should be taught at an earlier age than high school geometry, not just because it's good to know, but it enriches your knowledge of the concept, it helps you apply it correctly, and it is actually quite fun. When I originally learned the concept of proving something true, I learned it from people who really liked the idea, and because of that were able to show why they liked it in their explanation of it. So I ended up loving proofs. However, my math teacher from this last year doesn't like proofs. She likes algebra, likes calculus, just isn't a fan of proofs. This last year, she had to teach geometry, meaning she had to teach proofs. Since most of the kids in our class ended up learning that concept from her, they now don't like proofs either. It's not the student's fault, it's not even the teacher's fault. We just can't have teachers teaching topics they don't like. It will end up rubbing off on the kids. So if teachers aren't learning about math in college, then what are they learning?
While you learn child psychology, pedagogy, all the science behind giving information and optimizing retention of it, then you're thrown in front of a class of 25 10-year-olds and expected to make them all able to divide in proper fractions. How are you going to pull that off? All of the pedagogical knowledge in the world isn't going to make you able to walk into a classroom and inspire students on the first try. I'm sure we've all heard the saying that to master something, you need to spend 10,000 hours doing it. I'm not saying that pedagogy should be removed from the college teaching curriculum, but the only way to really become a good teacher is to teach classes, get criticism from administrators and colleagues, and then teach some more. Yes, America does do professional development, but these are often spent doing things like listening to speakers pitching new technologies rather than adding to these 10,000 hours. A day of professional development in Japan or Singapore, two of the leading countries in the world in mathematics, would go as follows. A randomly selected teacher would walk into a classroom of 20 test students. She would then proceed to teach a class with her administrators, co-workers, and usually a university professor observing in the back. After the class, the students would go home, and the university professor would facilitate a discussion about the positive and negative aspects of her teaching style and chip away at the question of how to teach correctly. What better way to develop a teacher than this? I think that more emphasis needs to be put on the development of our teachers, not before they get a job, not after they retire, but while they are teaching our students. There are also improvements that need to be done to the curriculum itself. Our country has a 99% literacy rate, but just an 80% numeracy rate, which is the ability to handle simple arithmetic problems. In fact, students are not coming out of math class with proper numeracy, creativity with numbers, or the ability to solve math problems most efficiently. A really fun way to teach all three of these things is to teach mental math. Many of the problems that students are asked to do on paper can be done much more easily in your head. Let me show you what I mean. First, can I get a volunteer who has a calculator on them, maybe on their cell phone or something? Okay, anyone who has a calculator on their phone, take it out. Okay, and while you're getting those out, you guys are going to check my work on this. I'm going to do a math problem in my head, and you'll verify it. Can someone give me a two-digit number, please?
24.
24, and another one?
82.
82. I want you all to multiply 24 times 82 on your calculators, and let's see if I can get this. That should be 1,968. Yes? Good. Now, there wasn't just one single way that I could approach that problem. There were many different ways that it could be done, which brings in creativity. For example, the problem 24 times 18 can be approached many ways. You can use the addition method, where you break the 24 into 20 plus 4, and do 20 times 18 plus 4 times 18. 20 times 18 is 360, 4 times 18 is 72, and 360 plus 72 is 432. You could also break the 18 into 10 plus 8. You can also use the subtraction method, where instead of doing 10 plus 8, you do 20 minus 2. 24 times 20 is 480, 24 times 2 is 48, and 480 minus 48 is 432 as before. You can also use the factoring method, where you break the 18 into 9 times 2 and do 24 times 9 times 2. 24 times 9 is 216, times 2 is 432. You could also have broken the 18 into 6 times 3, or the 24 into 12 times 2, 8 times 3, or 6 times 4. You can also use the squaring method, where you use an algebraic identity to turn the problem into 21 squared minus 3 squared. Many schools demand their students to memorize the squares up through 25, so these students would know that this is 441 minus 9, which again is 432. There is also a mental shortcut for squaring numbers that can be used as well. You can also use the close together method, where you use Vedic mathematics to turn the problem into 20 times 22 minus 2 times 4. This gives 440 minus 8, which again is 432. As you can see, there were 10 different ways that you could solve this one single problem. This shows that math is a creative subject, which it often appears like it isn't. Rather than teaching math with fun, creative problem solving, it is taught with boring, lifeless tests. When the No Child Left Behind Act was signed in 2002, the goal was to use district and state testing to figure out which schools were scoring below proficient, figure out what wasn't working in those schools, and fix it. This sounds like a great idea on face, but it ended up negatively affecting everyone in the education process: the students, the teachers, the administrators, even the curriculum writing committees. Robert Schaefer of the National Center for Fair and Open Testing once said that believing you can improve schooling by giving more tests is like believing you can make yourself grow taller by measuring your height. Though standardized testing does have a place, it shouldn't be negatively changing the teaching styles and curricula in schools across the country. Think back to a time when you were a student about to take a test. How did you feel? Were you thinking, oh, I can't wait to go show the state how much I learned this year? Or were you feeling bored, nervous, overwhelmed, stressed? Especially as a younger student, taking a big test is too much pressure. In fact, one of the test booklets in the Stanford Achievement Test series has instructions on what to do if a student vomits on the test booklet. If you need instructions on what to do if a student vomits on your test, then you might be pushing them a little too hard. Now, what if you're the teacher? Your chances of getting a bonus or promotion or getting penalized or fired depends on the amount of students that score proficient on a test. But if all that matters is if they score proficient, then why spend extra time trying to make the gifted students advanced? And frankly, many teachers in America do neglect the gifted students in their class. The students that will one day be designing the future are being ignored to optimize a teacher's proficiency rate. The TIMSS test, which is the standardized test that ranks the students around the world in mathematics, or the countries around the world in mathematics, too many students, they found that in America, only 7% of students qualified as advanced. In Singapore, 48% were advanced, and in South Korea, 47% were advanced. Similarly, the struggling students will often get ignored as well. If you are in the far below basic category of a test, the teacher would have to get you through far below basic, through below basic, through basic, and into proficient. But she could also spend that time getting 3 average students from basic to proficient, which would optimize her proficiency rate. With the proficiency rate being the most important statistic of a test, gifted students won't get the enrichment they deserve, and below average students will get left behind in the dust. As the administrator of your school, you are also being judged by many statistics. For instance, if someone wanted to know how many students in your school are advanced, they might look at the amount of accelerated and AP programs you offer. So many administrators will throw in some extra AP courses. They then have to find some students to go into the course and force them in, whether they're capable of handling the work or not. In 1956, the average number of AP students per school was 11.8. In 2009, this number went up to 97.4. I doubt that each school has 90 more geniuses in 2009 than it does in 1956. There's clearly pressure to push kids into AP courses. As on the curriculum writing committee, you are also influenced by the standardized test. Since schools want to do well on the test, they make sure that the curriculum teaches whatever is going to be on it. If it is testing fractions and decimals, they will teach fractions and decimals. If it is testing area and perimeter, they will teach area and perimeter. If it is testing combinatorics and graph theory, they will teach combinatorics and graph theory. But schools don't often go beyond what the test standards actually are. I was saying earlier that to design the future, it takes lots of different branches of mathematics. But science requires a lot of calculus and statistics, but technology requires discrete math and computer science, and pure mathematics requires dozens, maybe even hundreds of branches of math that aren't taught or even acknowledged in the American school system. I heard an analogy that the branches of mathematics are like islands of knowledge in a sea of ignorance. Calculus is an island, statistics is an island, game theory is an island, combinatorics is an island, number theory is an island, graph theory is an island, and these are all floating out there individually. When schools say that they teach math, they should mean that they give an overview of the concepts in this sea, and attempt to build bridges between the different islands. connect together these diverse ideas. But what schools are actually doing is just taking their students and dumping them off on the calculus island. The American school curriculum strictly covers algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and calculus. But how many of you guys use calculus on a day-to-day basis? How many of you even remember calculus from high school? Right now, it's as if we're telling all high school students that they should all take a language when they're in high school. Oh yeah, and that language has to be French. Well, what if you'd rather take Spanish or German or Italian or Chinese? This is what we're doing in mathematics. If we offer more electives, students will come away with a much better math education. The theme of this conference is Design the Future. But we're not going to be able, America isn't going to be able to continue designing the future if our people lack mathematical skill and initiative. I'm only 14, so I can't do much about math education in our country just yet. However, I know that there are people out there in the education system who can. The fact that we are 32nd in math should be a wake-up call for us. We need to fix our teachers, standardized testing methods, and curriculum so that our country can go back to being one of the best in the world. Thank you.